Welcome to View from the Gutters.
Bonus
episode number 1, giant size, special issue, bonus, or superhero
holiday edition.
Superhero holiday edition.
View from the Gutters, unlimited, number 1, giant size superhero edition.
View from the Gutters, unlimited number 1, special edition, giant size, super
unlimited annual one.
Use your words, Joe. I just said
I'm putting all of these outtakes in there. I want you to know that.
This is a bonus episode. We're not editing that.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, bonus edition number 1, giant size, special issue, superhero edition.
Edition.
With wraparound chromium covers.
Annual edition.
No, it's not an annual though.
Well,
it is.
Superheroes
it is an
have
annual
number
right.
one.
Also,
annual
this
number
is
two.
No, you know what it's going to be.
Year
This is going to be year 1. Bonus year 1.
But this is year 2.
No, technically, it's like year 3.
Technically, yeah. I mean,
we don't need to split hairs on that. We did this 13 weeks in a row.
Superhero edition.
Brought to you
Giant size, special issue, superhero edition with wraparound chromium covers.
Good. We're recording, so that's the intro. Ready to go. All right.
We're recording.
That's good enough. Fuck it. All right.
Oh,
so,
I just.
You did good. We'll just leave it at that.
We're just gonna leave it at that.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, it's got a chromium wraparound cover.
It's got a chromium wraparound cover,
and it's polybagged.
It is.
And
it is. And numbered.
And ridged for her comfort.
Yeah, and a limited edition signed trading card.
It is, with a certificate of authenticity.
Yep, and yeah.
And that card has a hologram on it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's got a, the chromium also has
if
a
you're
hologram
lucky.
on it.
Well, if you're lucky, you're going to
random.
get the foil
Right.
hologram.
And it's a special new number 1 edition, so you should be sure to buy it, even though it was in a print run of like a million. So, you know.
Definitely, they were very limited in number.
They were incredibly limited in number. As are my brain cells at this point in time. Welcome to our bonus edition. I am Joe Preddy, as usual.
I'm Andrew Chard. I forgot what it was for a minute.
I guess we're going in reverse order, so I'm Tobiah Panchin.
Cade Reynolds, also known as Robert Reynolds, also known as the Century.
Oh, that's some.
You just
foreshadowing.
blew it. Now everybody knows you're screwed, man. You're screwed.
Should we tell people what we're doing tonight, or should we?
Well, God knows when this is actually going to drop, but we're recording this in December, so this is kind of like our holiday episode.
Yeah.
And we're going to deviate from our normal format a little bit, which is why this is a bonus episode.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about superheroes.
We're going to be talking about the superheroes we love and why we love them. More specifically, the runs that speak to us the most about superheroes. Because I feel that superheroes still make up a bulk of comic books, and I think that that's what most people are being exposed to when comic books come up, when graphic art comes up in its most pervasive form. So yeah, we're going to be talking about comic books. We each have picked a...
we're also going to be drinking.
We're also going to be drinking, because that's what we do.
Yeah, Cade brought beer.
Thank you.
That's true, we did.
The homebrew that I made will not be done till next week. So, I mean...
But it is Chard's birthday, so...
It is Chard's birthday.
Happy birthday, Chard.
Yay.
Wish him a happy birthday.
I'm older now. I did a thing.
You did a thing. An involuntary thing that
I didn't
just
die
happened.
this year. Yay.
Older now,
maybe
but
just
still
a
the
little
youngest in the room.
Yeah, right.
Like you incrementally died, like, let's say, like, roughly 1/89th of the amount that you will die over your entire lifetime.
89th? 50th? We're not living past 50. Come on, people.
Well,
that is old.
I don't even want to think about that. But
I don't need to be wheelchair bound and diaper laden.
that's the best part.
We're
That's what I'm
just
looking
going
forward
out.
to.
Who said anything about a wheelchair? You will be crapping in your bed.
Yeah.
It's,
At 50, we're just going to start heroin.
okay.
Instead of meth.
You know
Hard
that if you
drugs,
start...
meth, we're mixing meth and heroin.
Oh, and tonight's episode is brought to you by meth, but we also picked up another sponsor,
Heroin.
heroin.
Yay. We're just reeling them in. This is where we make the big bucks.
Well, it is. It is. It really is. And, you know...
We're also in talks with the people that make puppets.
Yes.
For your own home sodomy needs.
That's
Right.
true. It's true. But before we devolve into heroin and puppet sodomy...
I am back. I am on this episode. That shit will not fly. I'm on the kibosh
sneak
right
it in.
here now.
No one will be
Puppet
eaten
sodomy.
in this episode
Sneak it
either.
in.
So,
Sneak it in.
puppet sodomy.
I We're in Washington.
There will be no terry cloth shenanigans on my watch.
There will be. We're
I just want to say we're in Washington, so heroin will be legal here
soon.
very soon.
Yeah, this is.
We're all looking forward to this.
To date, the
lot.
episode that we're talking about today is the first day that the first gay marriage license was filed for today.
Yep.
And it is no longer illegal to possess or smoke the marijuana
in your own home.
In your
right?
own home.
I don't know the rules.
And soon there'll be
I could
weed
go over
gardens.
that, but I'm not going to. Because
Anyways.
it's long and boring, and you don't care because
you just read them online.
If you want to know, just email Toby at why are you emailing somebody that you don't know when you could look up on the internet.com or at gmail.com, sorry.
Right. Hotmail.
Hotmail. At Hotmail. At AOL.com.
HOTMALE. Hotmail.com.
Yes, Hotmail.
I bought that domain name a long time ago.
Nice.
What's ironic is that all of those email addresses will work because I've got like 20 of them.
So we're going to talk about superheroes, actually, really. And we've each brought a book or run, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about why we love it. And we're going to talk about its importance. And then we're just going to gab, because that's what we do. And that's why you're listening, because we're good at it.
And we're going to talk about...
Or we're really bad at it, and you hate yourself, and you inflict our tormentuous words.
I think it's a foregone conclusion that anybody listening to this hates themselves.
Don't know if tormentuous is a word, but now it
It
is.
now.
I laugh at this show when I listen to it when I'm editing, so that makes me think that it's good. I don't know that that's true, but
no,
I don't know. I will also, in general, we're going to be talking a little bit about superheroes, not just the books that we brought.
Yeah, just
what we love about superheroes.
What makes superheroes good? What makes them interesting and compelling?
What kind of superheroes we like, and what kind of stuff is compelling to read about.
And we'll be referring to other runs we love and also maybe other books we've done and kind of touching back on that so that you get this feeling of continuity. Because that's what we're all about, because we're talking about comic books.
Yeah.
That's actually really funny, because I was going to say that continuity is the worst thing in the world, and it's destroying comic books.
Well, that's for later.
For another time, but actually, like, kind of a good tie-in to superhero comics, because continuity in superhero comics, because they're all crossing over with one another, like, tends to ruin superhero comics. But continuity is a thing that exists within all serialized fiction, whether you're reading detective fiction or you're watching soap operas or whatnot, or just a sequel to a movie series. It's just, past events happen and they have an impact on what happens next. And we tend to think of continuity as a dirty word, but when it's used correctly, it works really well. I'm bringing Invincible today. I don't want to jump into mine right away, but I
think that's a good segue.
Okay,
let's talk about it. Well, why don't you talk about it?
I'll talk about Invincible. I reread the first 8 volumes of it today. I've read up through volume 13 of the trade paperback. And one thing that really strikes me is, I guess I could call it continuity, but the way that things are dropped early in the series that tend to come back over and over again. Like, they set up villains really early on that show up later. If you're not really paying attention to the evolution of that character, like, you might not notice exactly what's going on with it. But there's a lot of good villains that return later that get set up early, and there's lots of nice drops of setup in there. So, like, when continuity's done well, I think it can be really strong, and I think Invincible's a good example of that. That's not why I'm picking it. The reason I'm picking Invincible is it's a creator-owned book, which is everything that I love about comics. It's controlled solely by one writer, who is Robert Kirkman, and the art is drawn by Ryan Otley. And the first, 40-something issues are colored by Bill Crabtree, and then Efko Placencia takes over after that. So it's really singularly, 3 guys, and then, another 3 guys for the last half, for the current half, are kind of in control of this. And it just shows so much about what it can do when you don't have editorial, really digging into your continuity. You kind of get the opportunity to tell the long stories and have the continuity that we're talking about. Invincible's story of a young superhero. He's just getting his powers. He's a senior in high school, and his dad is essentially Superman. He's Omni-Man in this universe, and he is the son of Superman, and he's waiting to get his powers. And in the first issue of the story, he discovers that he has powers. So his dad kind of takes him under his wing and starts to teach him a little bit about it. But without spoilers, and I'm trying not to spoil this, but it happens really early on in the story. Something happens with his father that puts them at odds with one another, and his dad is no longer in the picture. And so he kind of has to pick up the slack as the world's strongest hero. And Mark has the potential to be even stronger than his father, is brought up early on in the story. And I don't really want to go in. I mean, it's old. Like, that happened a long time ago. So a lot of the story has kind of evolved from that. But Mark becomes kind of his dad's stand-in with the government. He works for Cecil as this government handler. And he gets calls in his earphone and kind of works with a lot of different heroes. He teams up with, originally it's the Teen Team or something.
Yeah, the Teen Team.
And then he, and one of the interesting things that happens very early on in the story is the Justice League of that world, the Guardians of the Globe, all get murdered. And no one really knows what happened to them. But because of that, all of these teen heroes and kind of B-list heroes have to step up and become the heroes of the world. And yes, Joe, the books are cut irregularly. Thank you for pointing that out.
I mean,
I wasn't
you
sure.
can imagine the DC universe where, like, Superman disappears,
Right.
and the
Yeah.
Justice League all dies, and
Right.
suddenly the Teen Titans are like, hey, guess what, guys? You're now the premier superheroes in the world. Deal with every single problem we have.
And it's brought up early on that they're not very good at what they do. Like, they're kind of shitty at it, and they get better over time. But
they're a bunch of teenagers.
and it's whenever they go off world to like solve a problem, then the B team of the B team is left to handle stuff. Like, shit gets out of control really quickly, and there's a couple like near nuclear accidents that happen. And one of the things I love about this series is it is a deconstruction of superheroes in the way that it's often poking fun at itself. There's a great scene early on where the original Justice League of the world, the Guardians of the Globe, are all getting called together, and it's showing them doing like cool stuff. The Batman style character is, fighting villains in Midnight City, which is a city that's perpetually in darkness. And there's a lot of references to the other heroes, like the Green Lantern has to puke up this little green gem that he swallows every time, and the Martian doesn't have intangibility. There's just a lot of cool stuff, but my favorite part is the Aquaman character of the Justice League is just sitting on a throne waiting for like 3 panels before his phone rings, and he's like, oh, finally, things to do. And it just like pokes fun at other superheroes. I think this succeeds on a level where if you've never read a superhero comic before, this is a great comic to read. If you've read every single superhero comic there is to read in the world, this is still a great comic to read because it knows that it's a superhero comic. It's able to poke fun at itself. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time, there are really serious moments in it. There's very good emotion. There's a lot of like violence, and I forget how brutal this book can be because of the beautiful styling on the art and the bright colors and the simplicity of the lines. It feels a lot like a mainstream book, but every so often someone puts a fist through someone else's chest and blood explodes all over the panel, and it takes you by surprise. It's in a very different way than adult books of other...
It's supposed to be surprising because one of the things that they do is a lot of these characters have some form of invulnerability, and they really kick the crap out of each other. And then there comes that moment where they run into somebody who doesn't have invincibility, and it's like, oh, I'm going to super punch you. Oh, wait, I just broke your spine in half, and now you're dead.
Yeah.
I totally didn't mean for that to happen. What the
Right.
hell? And like the characters themselves are on the page going, oh my god, I just fucked up.
Yeah. Well, and
Now
there's
you
also
fucked up.
times
There's also
times
fucked up.
where it is intentional, where they are intentionally trying to punch holes through each other. There's a very powerful race of alien super powered people that are just, chopping each other's arms off. And there's a brutal scene. Alan the alien is a character that's introduced very early on and becomes like a really cool part of the story. But at one point in the story, he fights against this alien race called the Voltrumanites, and they kick the shit out of him. Like, his eyeball pops out, and they rip his arm off, and they punch a hole through him, and you think he's dead. Like, he comes back.
That's
It's pretty
a pretty
obvious
big problem for him because he's only got the one eye.
He's only got one eye.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's pretty brutal when characters get beat up in this book.
It doesn't pull any punches.
It's one of the things that I really like about this series
Yeah.
because it is a deconstruction of superheroes, but it doesn't do the thing that a lot of deconstructions do, which is say, oh, well, if you just take away the genre conventions of this comic, here's all these things that are just really silly, like costumes.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, Batman's crazy because he dresses up like a giant bat and he's a grown man. How weird is that?
Yeah.
It doesn't do that. It treats all the genre conventions very, very seriously, and it really examines them in what I think is a very mature way.
Yeah.
And says, okay, let's take this as written. You know, there's these really strong guys, and they go around fighting all the time. Occasionally somebody's going to get really badly hurt by that, and let's follow the consequences.
Yeah, it is nice to see, like I mentioned earlier, but in DC and Marvel Comics you have these superheroes that, because they're controlled by the continuity and the editorial staff, like they have to get reset back to page 1 at the end of every miniseries or every story arc, and this is a book that doesn't have that. Like, the main character could easily get killed and warped to another dimension, and the story could pick up from there, and it would just have to go there. It would never have to reset itself back to, oh, this is the story you started reading. Like, it has an evolution. It has moments where it goes pretty dark places, and it doesn't just undo it because they made a deal with the devil or forgot what happened. Like, you have to live with the consequences of the world, and that makes it really strong.
It does.
But it makes it much more interesting.
Definitely.
I mean, it furthers your connection to the characters because you can invest in it. And so when something happens, when you do have a moment where somebody is just like wrecking shit, you're like really affected by it because you know you've been shown in the past that this is not just going to go. Nobody's going to come in and wave their little magic continuity wand and it's all going to go back to normal. Like, that shit is done, and it is done.
A lot of characters die, and most of them stay dead. So it's pretty brutal. Another thing that I really like is it kind of jokes with its own main character in the fact that Invincible is not the perfect hero. Like, he's not an anti-hero, and he's not, like, flawed in the way that he's like, I don't want to be a hero or something. But he is... he kind of pokes fun at himself, where he's like, he says things like, sometimes I just wish there was something to punch really hard. Yeah. You know, like, he has that problem where, like, once you get into the emotional side of it, or the, you know, kind of detective angle of being a superhero where you have to, like, find out why people are doing things, he's not really very good at that, or doesn't really want to do that.
One of the things that I really like about this series as a deconstruction, and it actually took me a while to figure this out, is that Mark is kind of your point of view character for the evolution of superheroes as a genre. And so he kind of goes through this phase where he's kind of like a little bit more grimdark, and he's like, I'm just going to punch all my problems away, and this is going to solve everything. And he's like, wow, that's a really bad idea. Let me try something else. And as he grows up as a character, he goes through the evolutions that superheroes went through as a genre.
Yeah.
And there's a period around the middle of the series at this point, like in the 40s and 50s, I want to say. My memory's a little bit vague, but I actually gave up on the series because I was like, wow, this is getting really kind of petulant and whiny, and I don't like it. And I had to wait a couple of years and come back to the series and see where it had evolved to actually look back on that and go, oh, he was doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And it's pretty brilliant, too, because, like, sometimes the superhero arc or the superhero evolution as, like, a meta-genre is pretty obvious in there. Like, he jokingly changes the character's costume halfway through, like, gives him a costume redesign in the way that, you know, most of our favorite characters have gotten costume redesigns. And there's an event book in the middle, and, like, he does kind of all of the superhero tropey stuff that we all kind of, you know, are tired of. But in a book like this, it's kind of, at the same time, fresh, but also, like, poking fun at itself in a really interesting way. And I think it's a really smart series. It's really well written. A lot of people give Kirkman shit for his writing, but I think that in this series, it's the strongest of anything he's written. I think this is better than Walking Dead.
I agree.
No, I think that this is definitely, if not the best, at least in the top 3 superhero comics being written today.
Definitely.
Like, bar none.
Yeah.
Forgot.
I think for me, it's my favorite ongoing superhero comic, because I just know that it's always going to be interesting. I don't know what to expect.
Right. And this is the, I guess, the exception that proves the rule as far as me knocking the idea of continuity because, I mean, the way that the two big comic creators, DC and Marvel, treat continuity, it's actually kind of a discontinuity because the characters are so frequently reset to some kind of baseline standard, where that never happens in this series. Like, I like that there's one person that's written the entire thing, and it's never going to be a case where somebody else comes onto the book and suddenly it's reset and they're doing something completely different.
Yeah. Or
it's never going to be the case where there's like this huge multi-comic crossover that's going to completely disrupt the storyline that's going on. And then when we come back, he's doing something completely different because they changed writers and the new writer didn't want to continue the story was going on, so they just dropped the plot line.
Or like reset something.
Like occasionally there'll be a crossover, like you'll see Savage Dragon in the background.
Right.
But nothing that happens in Invincible impacts Savage Dragon, and nothing that happens in Savage Dragon impacts Invincible. It's just kind of like, there's a crossover, and that character appeared briefly, and now they go away.
It's that fun kind of crossover that used to happen in Marvel and DC, where like Iron Man would fly by in the background of a panel of Spider-Man, and someone would be like, what's Iron Man doing here? Editor's note, read Iron Man 11. You know, like, it's just that kind of fun thing where you're like, oh, it's just promotion for that other book, but like, you never see the reverse of that panel in Iron Man where, like, they have to capture continuity perfectly. So, like, Iron Man flies through at that exact moment when Spider-Man's there. And, like, there's so much more tedious detail in the crossovers of today where it's like you have to show it from 15 different fucking books all at the same time.
And that's the thing that really bothers me about modern comics is just this constant state of crossover.
Yeah.
And it's like this meta continuity where, like, every single minute is planned out.
Yeah.
And you could be doing something in a solo title, and then suddenly it's World War Hulk or Darkest Night or any of these things, and like all of that planning and all of that character or story development goes out the window because it's event time.
Right.
And then you'll have like 4 or 5 issues where you're getting back to the solo stuff, and then the next event comes in.
And the crazy thing is, though, like that doesn't need to occur because you have Wolverine trucking along in his own book, and then, like, there's a major event, and that happens, and if the Wolverine book, like, just kept trucking through that event, you would just assume, well, I guess that event fits somewhere else into his continuity. Like, you would just easily, like, think your way out of that situation.
Like, I really don't feel like continuity is even a thing that we need. I mean, I think it's possible at this point in the comics industry for you to just say, like, okay, well, here's this Wolverine comic, and there's a bunch of stories about Wolverine. And then here's this other comic where Wolverine's on the Avengers.
Right.
And they're both Wolverine, but they're not the same Wolverine. Like, there's not a continuity between them where he's like, today I'm on the Avengers, and tomorrow I'm on X-Force, and the day after that I'm on the X-Men. Like,
I think we're getting a little bit into the end part of the discussion.
I think that we can transition this into another book.
Yeah, and I think that the thing about Invincible is that Invincible sells because it's good. It's written well. It's written with forethought and care and love, and
it's everything that's good about superheroes.
Absolutely, today. Because these are where you see the best comic books. I feel that segues into. I mean, you mind if I?
You go next. I just think that it's like creator-owned books are where it's at when it comes to stuff like this.
Absolutely, something about Invincible, and that is the first 12 issues. The first 2 trades were drawn by Cory Walker before Ryan Ottley came in. And to me personally, the change, while very subtle, was amazing.
Oh, absolutely. It's a welcome change.
Is one of my favorite artists.
And it's funny because the change to me was definitely something I had to go back and like double check.
Yeah, I actually forgot that happened.
But it is a subtle change, but it's an excellent. I think it's a welcome change.
They're all of the artists that work on this book have a really similar styling with very sharp lines and very like nice shapes. The original stuff is a little bit more geometric before Ottley takes over.
Yeah, it's got this really awesome, super flat quality to it. Like,
yeah.
Very, very little shading that happens.
Yeah.
And I think all of the artists that are on this book handle it with a lot of reverence and care. Like it's really well drawn all the way through.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an amazing book from start to finish.
It really is. Yeah. I think we would all agree that it's something that if you're looking to break into comic books and look for a place to start, they're all collected. You can buy the trades really easily.
Yeah, you can get softback trades that are like 6 issues. You can also get
The big hardcovers.
Big hardcovers that are really nice. Joe, you owe me $1 because your cell phone went off in the middle of the podcast.
I don't even know how that... It must have... I think it happened when I was doing this.
But yeah, each hardcover contains 2 trade paperbacks. So they're actually a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
With the exception of the first one, because all image number 1s are $9.99.
Really?
Well, but
that
I think the first...
$9.99?
No. The trade paperbacks are all $9.99.
Yeah.
So the hardcover is actually slightly more than the first 2, but all the hardcovers after that are better deal than the trade paperbacks, I believe. And that may not be true.
I don't even know why I'm asking that, because I have like the first, I want to say 4 trades. There's no reason for me to get the hardcover.
The hardcovers are beautiful, though. They're beautiful. Like I really like the hardcover presentation. That oversized hardcover, where it's like 2 trades together and it's slightly bigger, I think is the perfect format for comics.
I know this is a complete digression, but I don't know if they're still doing it, but I love the fact that you can get these like leather-bound Marvel hardcovers.
Yeah, they are still doing those.
Those are so amazing, and they're only like $17-18.
I think they're like 24 now. They've gone up pretty heavily in price.
Yeah, they have, and it's odd to me. Oh no, wait, I think the Marvel ones are still pretty.
At least when
affordable.
I was getting them
the
a few
DC
years
ones
ago.
are definitely pricey.
When I was getting them a few years ago, they were pretty reasonably priced.
I want to say $19.99.
I think the Avengers ones are a little more, but yeah. Either way, they're really nice. I like the hardcovers a lot in any comic condition. I like.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, go buy Invincible. Read
so
it.
what do superheroes mean to you, Joe?
Well, I'm going to talk about the modern age Flash from Flash Volume 2. I'm going to focus specifically on Mark Waid's run because I love what he did to the character. But
and this is specifically like post-crisis.
This is specifically post-crisis. The DC Modern Age starts after Infinite Crisis and goes to Infinite Crisis.
You don't
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm sorry, and goes to Infinite Crisis.
So this is Wally West Flash.
This is Wally West, who is, in my opinion, the Flash. I think I've stated that opinion many times. You've
been pretty vociferous.
You really like Barry Allen a lot.
No.
Really?
I
don't listen when you talk at all.
I'm pretty sure that your favorite Flash was Kyle Rayner.
He was. That's it. He was a great Flash. After Clark Kent stopped being the Flash, and Bruce Wayne was Superman.
Super Flash. Yeah.
Well, wasn't Clark Kent a Green Lantern for a little while?
He was.
Pretty sure he was.
He totally was. The Flash. So Wally West is a kid. He's hanging out with Barry Allen. He becomes Kid Flash. Barry Allen dies. So I know this is a spoiler. This is a 25-year-old spoiler here. But Barry Allen dies. Sacrifices his life at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Wally West becomes the Flash. And it was one of the first modern age runs that I read in its entirety. I can't remember the exact number of issues, but William Messner Loebs writes for the first 61 and tells the story of a Wally West that's petulant. He's kind of a jerk. In the first Flash Volume 2, number 1, Wally West is transporting a heart cross country, and he goes to the hospital and he goes, "You have to pay me to bring this heart across the country. I can make it in 3 hours, and nothing else could make it as fast as I could. You have to give me health insurance for the rest of my life." And it's definitely a feeling of like, wait a minute, this is not how superheroes are supposed to be. But and this kind of gets into it is over the next almost 200 issues, you watch Wally West become a superhero, not a sidekick, but a superhero. And not just a superhero, but one of the greatest superheroes, in my opinion. It's handled well. William Messner Loebs writes till issue 61, and then Mark Waid takes over. Mark Waid tells probably some of the greatest stuff. I think it's considered to be some of the greatest stuff of his comics writing career. But it's really, to me, superheroes are about overcoming obstacles. They're about growing into being a superhero. I don't think it's the most interesting superhero stories to me have always been the ones where your hero is moving towards something. You never get to the penultimate moment where you are the ultimate hero. You're always learning something. And we've talked about this when we talked about Venom, Batman Venom, and watching Bruce Wayne deal with his addiction to Venom and how he's initially drawn to it because it makes him a better crime fighter, but then he grows and he overcomes, and it's a really compelling story.
There's growth there.
There's growth, and I hesitate to use the word relatable. I try to stay away from that because really, Batman can like do 1,000 push-ups, and that's not relatable to me because I can do maybe one.
Right.
But
it's a really good push-up.
It is a really good push-up. I put my all into it.
It's worth watching.
I put my all into it.
It's a process.
It is. I mean, Batman's up for 72 hours. He's chasing the Joker. He's using forensics. I'm up for like 16 hours. I'm falling asleep. I'm sleeping wonderfully. I'm waking up and having a donut. We're two different worlds.
That push-up also takes an hour, so it is kind of a thing to watch.
I've got it done in 45 minutes, actually.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, when you watch the time lapse, like the nature documentary version of Joe doing a push-up, it's amazing. It's just beautiful.
What people don't realize, though, is that I'm not pushing myself up. I'm pushing the rest of the earth away from me. Wow. That's really what's happening.
Poetry in
Actually,
motion.
Full disclosure, I do like to get high and watch Joe do a push-up.
It's amazing. It really is amazing.
It'll blow your mind.
The BBC is going to do a documentary on me next year. It's just called Joe.
It's in their series, Worthless Things. We've run out of stuff to film.
Yeah. But there's a moment, there's an issue I cannot remember what issue it is, where Wally West has been working in the beginning of his run. He can only run at he has a top speed of 700 miles an hour, and due to Crisis on Infinite Earths and being hit with an antimatter ray and other suitably comic booky things, right? But the great thing about that is it takes this rather kind of corny Silver Age explanation, I shut by lasers, and turns it into this really compelling psychological battle that he has about stepping into the shoes of his mentor. And there's this moment in the run where he overcomes that, and he realizes that the greatest tribute he can play to Barry Allen is to be the best Flash that he can be. And it's really probably one of the more powerful moments I've read in any superhero comic. There's a few others, but it's an incredibly powerful moment. And in that moment, the Flash, Wally West, is this incredibly real character because he's grown up, and I've watched him grow up. I've watched him become this kind of like he wins the lottery at one point, and he's just like womanizing, and he's not very bright at first. It seems he's really kind of, you don't like him. He's kind of a douchebag, but you watch him become less and less of a douchebag until he's this amazing hero, and he's putting himself on the line, not just for his own goals, but to protect the city he lives in and to protect the people he loves. And I just think it's a really powerful run. And one of my big problems about Jeff Johns coming in is Jeff Johns comes in and turns everything very grimdark, and everything is about life and death. And I don't think that comic books need that. I think it can be compelling every once in a while, but I think he came in and ruined this really nice setup that was going on.
Well, that kind of growth takes time.
Absolutely.
And it's something that I think that some people weren't willing to, sign up for, that long style of comic book that Invincible kind of like tells you that it's going to be by being in its own world. But like readers of mainstream DC and Marvel comics, like maybe aren't ready for a 70, 80 issue commitment.
And that's kind of, especially on The Flash.
What was it, 200 issues?
Yeah.
I mean, who does 200 issues in this day and age?
I know, right? And that's the thing. This is exactly the point. It takes 60 or 70 issues before Wally is even running at levels that you would associate as a comic book reader with The Flash. Yeah. Then he hits the Speed Force, and then even within that, there's growth. There's his growth with Bart Allen, who comes back from the future with Iris Allen, who he thought was dead. He runs into Barry, and a few other crazy things happen. But even then, throughout the entire run, he's growing, he's changing, he's becoming a better hero. And then, in a span of a few issues, maybe I can't remember exactly how many it is, but all of a sudden the Rogues go from being this kind of jovial ragtag band of villains to being these like, we will fucking kill you, we are going to gut your children and rape your wives and make you watch, and we're awful. And it feels very forced, and it doesn't feel like it belongs in that universe. It feels like, I mean, when Batman's villains come up and are like, I have all these school children here, and I'm going to like gas them and watch them kill each other, and that will make you very sad, Batman. You're like, oh, okay, I expect that from a Batman villain. But the Flash villains up until this point are kind of, they're not very villainous, and I think that's what makes the run so good, is that Wally is fighting against himself for the most part, and that makes for a very compelling storyline, as opposed to these villains, these external threats, which I kind of think of as artificial difficulty, like in a video game, where they can't think of good things to do, so they just throw wave after wave of bad guys at you in hopes to wear you down. And that's not a substitute for good gameplay, in the same way that artificially increasing the evilness of your villains is not a substitute for good storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, another thing to note is Wally was not a new character introduced.
No, he wasn't.
Post-Crisis, not like Kyle Rayner.
Which is another
great
excellent example of a great story arc. Ron Mars telling the story of the new Green Lantern coming in after another heavy, Hal Jordan, who was revered as a god in some circles of in some parts of the DC universe, and this was, the man, and he had a pretty hard fall from grace. So Kyle stepping in had a very similar arc, except that he had no superhero experience. He had no idea what he's doing, and he had nobody to teach him.
So not only did we have 200 issues of Wally post-Crisis becoming a better hero, but we met Wally in the Silver Age as Barry
1960, I want to say his first appearance was
as Barry Allen's sidekick, Kid Flash.
As this kid that was hanging out with Barry when he got dosed with chemicals.
It's like
in the same lab as Barry Allen. It was his nephew.
Right? So, but I mean, that's like a 400 issue arc.
Yeah, no, it's huge.
What, it was Iris's brother's son.
I believe that's what it was. And then the funny thing is that it was Iris's brother's son, and
because he's an Allen Iris.
And
it's Iris West Allen.
Yeah,
is it okay?
Which sounds like a part of Pennsylvania, West Allen.
But I mean, that's a character run that we may never see again.
I really don't think so.
Young kid to adult replacing his mentor, in that same way.
And done in that way so that it's fun to read and it's interesting to read and it's emotional to read. I think that you create an emotional connection to Wally West, because I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to is having a mentor. Either you want a mentor, you had a mentor at one time, and kind of dealing with those feelings that come up. I think it's compelling. I think it's a really amazing thing, and I think it's handled beautifully in those issues.
So I want to ask you something, Joe, and I have not actually read this run myself, so I'm interested for your perspective on this. But I found that the stories that I like the most, or that I feel are the best written, are ones where you have a character who has an internal conflict. And then you have an external conflict which in some way mirrors that internal conflict, whereby the character resolving the external conflict learns something about themselves to resolve the internal conflict.
There's an amazing part, and I'll answer that by tying it directly to one of the arcs in the run. And without getting too into it, probably even people passingly familiar with DC Comics and the Flash know what the Speed Force is, and Wally's first interaction with the Speed Force is not.
That's what makes him run fast.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sort of. I mean,
it's
more
this kind of
than that, but...
other dimensional force that fuels him and answers all the questions you have, like why doesn't he burn 1,000,000 calories when he's running, and
why doesn't he light on fire?
Why doesn't he light on fire or smash with the force and inertia and blah blah blah? It's all the Speed Force, right? It's this wonderful catch-all explanation.
Science magic that keeps you from asking questions.
Exactly.
So it's a good comic booky explanation.
Why can't I get a breakfast biscuit after 10 a.m.?
Speed Force. That's what it is. And Wally basically goes into the Speed Force. He's not seen for a while, and when he comes back, he has adventures clearly. But everybody on our plane of existence thinks he's dead, including his wife Linda. And when he comes back, there's this great scene between them when he looks at her and he says, "You're how I got back. Like I thought of you, and I felt the love I have for you, and that's what drew me back." And it sounds like the cheesiest thing in the universe, but because you're there with him every step of the way, and you're watching him go through this, and you're watching his motivation to get back to his family, his wife, it really is a real thing. It's something that you could relate to, coming back, fighting against odds to come back to something that you care about at that level. And because you've been with him throughout this whole thing, and one of the biggest things in Wally West's life is his relationship with women, it's that much more important because he's finally made a connection, and because of that, he's become more real. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. He's watching Wally overcome his conflicts because so many of them are generated by himself. Yeah. Definitely make him a more real character and a wonderfully rich character in a way that I think that you don't get a lot because everybody wants Batman to be grimdark. Everybody wants Superman to kind of be like, I'm flying around Superman, woo! And you don't see, there's this great moment in All-Star Superman where Superman, this girl's going to jump off a building and he's just there. Yeah, we've talked about this before, but it's this incredibly powerful moment because it's not one you see. You always see Superman saving the whole world. You very rarely see him saving that one person. And because of that...
He doesn't have to punch anything to do it. He doesn't have to catch her while she's falling. It's so much more powerful because he gets there and instead of helping her by saving her, he helps her help herself.
Absolutely.
And realizing her importance.
That's something that Superman often talks the talk on in terms of being an inspiration to people. But so rarely do you see him walk the walk on that in terms of actually just being there for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's powerful moments like that I think makes superhero comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think they make the best and most powerful superhero comics, and that I think the Flash, that first part of the modern age run of the Flash before Jeff Johns' run, which does have its highlights. He has some really interesting ideas, and that's what makes it even more frustrating. Yeah. Is because he does have these really compelling ideas, but he almost feels like the guy that runs up to you, he's like, I got this really great idea, and he just kind of skips over all the meat of it to get to what the cool part is, and you can't do that.
I was actually having this conversation with Cade before we recorded while you were out of the room, because we were talking about creators that we hate. Mm-hmm. And you really hate Jeff Johns, and I really hate Mark Miller. And the point that Cade made was that for every creator that you really hate, they have to have one work that's really good because it makes you hate them that much.
Even more, absolutely.
Yeah. Because you can look at Jeff Johns, you can look at Mark Miller, and you can say they're so close to having a good idea.
Yeah. Mark Miller wrote Red Sun. Jeff Johns wrote Green Lantern Rebirth. Where are those writers?
Yeah. What happened to that guy?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard to capture lightning in a bottle twice. I've said that. I don't think that's a saying.
No, it is. I think it's a great saying.
Well, capturing lightning in a bottle is a saying. I don't know about twice.
Whatever.
I think you're combining that and lightning only strikes, or never strikes the same place twice.
Whatever. It's a saying I say. I've said it on the podcast before. But it's hard to recapture that, kind of magic that made them a compelling writer to read in the first place. And they had a lot to prove when they first came into the comic book industry, and so they, put their whole heart out there, and the whole rest of their career is probably going to be trying to recapture that, to master that magic.
Or buying into their own press and just thinking that they're God's gift to the industry.
The thing is, I think, says a lot about modern comics is that kind of run, that Flash run, is probably never going to happen again in the same way because the way the industry works now is there's just this assumed high rate of turnover where every 5 years there's going to be a new readership, and that may or may not be true, but they're less willing to take time with characters like that. They want to hear a pitch from writers that are 6 issues long, 12 issues long, and are going to say, this is what happens at the beginning, and then he does all this crazy awesome stuff, and then he does more crazy awesome stuff, and then he does more crazy awesome stuff. And there's never time to breathe with that character.
Absolutely.
You never get to see that character just be that character.
Right.
Just kind of exist in the world that they've created.
Which I think the Superhero Day Off is a great example, but there's also a run on JLA called, I think it's Tears of the Gods. Mm-hmm. And
Trial. Is it Trial?
I don't think it's Trial.
I think it is Tears of the Gods. We talked about this on my first episode.
I think we might have done that, and it's basically just, it's like 7 standalone stories, and in each one, a member of the Justice League has failed. And it's really interesting to see that because nobody tells those stories unless it's in this melodramatic way.
Right.
Like, people bring up Jason Todd all the time because it's like, Batman's biggest failure. And I'm like, it's boring. Let's not do that anymore.
And it's funny, to me, though, Batman's, one of Batman's most interesting failures is in Batman Venom, and it's in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Just, can't save that little girl, and she dies.
Yeah, absolutely.
He doesn't beat himself up over it. It's not the end of the world, but it affected him in a way that carries through that entire next 6 issues.
And you get the feeling from that point on that he's carrying that with him.
Yeah.
And not in this vocal way, and not in a angsty, melodramatic, I'm going to go and cut myself now way.
It's not overt. It's very subtle. It's very subtle. It's like he fails. He's upset about it. He doesn't talk about it for the next 6 issues. Yeah. But you can tell it's there because it was set up in a really strong way, I think.
I think the best Jason Todd moments have just been when it's Batman standing in front of that case.
Absolutely, and I think that does it. I think
Jason
that
Todd's
does it.
uniform in it, and it just him standing there
just
speaks so many more volumes than any dialogue could ever say.
Absolutely.
The fact that he kept that outfit to remind himself of his failures says a lot about that.
You can tell that it's just a knife in his side every day. He look like he's down there in the cave looking at it.
And the amazing thing, I think, is that you see it used in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. You know, it's used to it is occasionally used to remind him of his fight and his struggle, but occasionally. He uses it as a crutch or an excuse to kind of force other people away. Yeah. And of course, other people are like, when the other people you're hanging out with are people that you train to kick ass at the level that you do, it's kind of hard to tell them to fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, Batman Fugitive is a really good example.
Oh, great! When Nightwing clocks him, that's one of my favorite moments because you want to hit him at that point because you're like, stop being such an ass, stop being such a self-indulgent ass.
Yeah.
But
I know this is a complete digression, but one of my favorite Batman moments ever is actually from the cartoon Young Justice that's been going the last couple of years. Because there's an episode where he sits down with Clark Kent and talks to him about Superboy and how he's not meeting his obligations as far as taking care of him. Mm-hmm. And then you see a moment between Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, and you're like, Batman is an amazing dad.
Yeah.
He has surrounded himself with all of these children, really, and he's created himself as this father figure. He's actually a really good, he really cares about his adopted children.
It's interesting.
There's that
great story.
There's that great moment, and it's the first season after they've just found Superboy, right? And then they're sitting at the booth, and Bruce is like, Clark, you need to talk to him. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Is Batman telling Superman not to be a deadbeat dad? Yeah. And he's just like, that's amazing. Because it totally does. It totally makes sense because...
you compare that to every single moment in every Batman comic where he's pushing people away. He's like, no, I have to do this alone. This is my fight. You can't get involved. Blah. And I fucking love that moment so much more.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that is really the correct interpretation of Batman.
Oh, no, absolutely.
In relation to his proteges.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that when it's done right, they push back and there's growth there. And he breaks down that wall and he says, a bigger part of this family that I'm a part of is trusting them to know what their abilities are and what they can and can't do. Mm. And when that happens, it's really amazing, and it really makes Batman much more compelling. Which is why I like human Batman and not, the Bat God that's got everything in his filing cabinet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything you wanted to add about Wally West before we move on?
No, I think, it was once said that the most interesting thing that Barry Allen ever did was die. And I think the reason that is because Barry Allen was kind of a boring guy. And because of his connection to Wally West, he becomes a protagonist in a way that he never was before in Wally West's story. And I think that really when you start a story like that, it speaks to the ability of the writers. But I agree with you. You don't see that kind of stuff anymore.
Well, it's also interesting because that was the only moment that Barry Allen was ever in the modern age of comics.
Yeah,
essentially it was his death.
Yeah, and it's I do not accept that he came back.
I think that Barry Allen and Jason Todd are on very even footing in that sense, that they are important as icons, like Uncle Ben was, like Bucky was for a very long time. Yeah. They are important not as characters, not as people, but as ideals that they represent.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that inspires that character to be a hero.
Right. And I think that's a good segue into what Cade wants to talk about. Cade's book.
Okay, so I was looking.
A whole speech prepared. I feel intimidated.
Did you take notes?
You did.
You said no notes.
No,
many times. We've said no notes.
Don't say that.
I've never said
I
that.
have notes. I just never look at them.
Thank God. Make the rest of us look bad. The listeners can see when we're reading notes.
I have memory problems, okay?
What am I doing here? Who are you?
As the token mentally disabled person, I think I have a right to have notes.
I thought that was Joe.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
Wow. We should be double collecting on government aid now.
Let the man talk. Let the man talk.
Okay, so I was looking for a good superhero book. I had many options to choose from because, honestly, to me, there are many good superhero books. So I ended up choosing The Sentry because after a reread, it said everything that I wanted to say. How convenient. So it's basically a good versus evil story, and that takes place in the Marvel Universe. The superhero's name is The Sentry. His real name is Robert Reynolds. Same last name as me, coincidentally. And so he keeps having these dreams that are actually memories of how he used to be the superhero named The Sentry, but nobody can remember him. However, they start becoming more poignant. Poignant. And he realizes that his arch nemesis, the Void, is coming back. Upon realizing this, he starts going to the other Marvel superheroes. First, his best friend, Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, who is wondering who the hell he is. And which is, pretty standard if somebody just showed up one day and said, "Hey, I'm a superhero, and my arch nemesis is coming back to Earth." And so Reed Richards, with the help of Doctor Strange, realizes that Bob Reynolds is telling the truth. And Sentry goes and he talks to Spider-Man and Professor X and the Hulk. And the Hulk actually does remember who he is in a very touching scene that I really enjoyed. And so throughout this time, he's having trouble dealing with the different memories and gathering superheroes together. And towards the end of the first miniseries with the Sentry, there's this great newscast that he's a part of, and I would like to read it because to me it sums up everything that's great about this comic book. And he says, "My fellow Americans, as you're now aware, I have recently returned from a period of exile, a time in which all memory of me was somehow erased from your awareness. I believe the attempt to tarnish my reputation to have been a conspiracy. I believe this can be proven and those responsible brought to task. In the meantime, a matter of extreme urgency has arisen. You will by now have received news of the supposed climatic disturbance in the mid-Atlantic heading for shore. It is my solemn duty to inform you all that this storm portends the return of the Void. It would be remiss of me to suggest that the Void's re-emergence signifies anything but the gravest danger. I expect him to make landfall this evening somewhere on the Upper East Coast, most likely New York City. The proper authorities have been alerted. At this moment, the evacuation of most major northeastern cities is underway. I ask for common reason to prevail at this time. The Void will submit. I give you my assurance of that. To that end, I now call upon my meta-powered brothers and sisters from all shores and all walks of life to come to my aid. You have known me as a leader. Whatever our perceived differences, we must now unite against a common enemy. It is our duty and responsibility to remember those who have already fallen. Please, all of you, I am asking for your help. Our very existence depends on it." So with that, I think Robert Reynolds sums up to me everything that's great about superhero comics. You have the excitement, the supreme. Oh, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. The supreme need for superheroes in the world, at least in the Marvel universe. And the story is set up in such a weird way that you always get this feeling that the story isn't real. And yet at the same time, you get this feeling that it's more real than anything else in the Marvel universe. At the end of the book, he goes away again. I'm not going to spoil it. He comes back in the pages of the New Avengers after the Disassembled series in a very profound and discombobulating way, which I never actually finished that story arc, and I plan to. After rereading this, I forgot how good it was. But he does come back in just a really mind-blowing way. And so yeah, that's the Sentry.
I think this is an interesting series too, because it was originally intended to be an example of why a Superman style character, why a very powerful character cannot work in the Marvel universe. Right. And so it was kind of this like comparing and contrasting of very different superhero universes. One that is as powerful as the DC universe, and one that is more grounded in realism, quote air quotes, that the Marvel universe is. It was a Marvel Knights series that was kind of like set out to prove all of that. And then Bendis used him in the New Avengers, and a lot of people really disliked that character in the New Avengers, which I think goes on to further the idea of like why that character can't work in the Marvel universe.
Right.
It's because like fans, didn't enjoy him as a character, and it's like, well, there's a reason. It's because he doesn't belong here.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of character that this universe really needs, and so it was kind of this cool meta superhero comic.
Yeah,
in a lot of weird ways.
Marvel is not the best place for archetypes. I think DC kind of has the market cornered on archetypes, and Superman is definitely an archetypal hero. I think the Sentry, my only experience of the Sentry is in reading a little bit of the New Avengers. So I've actually not read this, but I think it's interesting because it's a very traditional thing, right? There's a great evil coming, and a great hero, a great good has to combat that. And I think that is at the essence of. I think that is the essence of what a superhero story is about, is that conflict.
Yeah, I think that you often see the trope that the superhero creates the supervillain. Yeah. Superman appears and he creates the need for a Lex Luthor. Mm-hmm. Batman appears and he creates the Joker. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is an inversion of that, and I think it's a very potent one, that the existence of great evil creates great heroes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it necessitates their existence.
But without a great challenge to overcome, like these heroes aren't nearly as impressive, They're just,
absolutely.
Like they haven't, unless they have a, cataclysmic threat to battle against, they don't get to show their superhero-dom in any way.
And especially on a scale of this level with heroes from all over the Marvel universe coming together, because you've got the Spider-Man, you've got the Hulk, you've got the X-Men, Tony Stark,
Fantastic
Four. Dr. Octopus even appears and fights side by side with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you've got all these heroes, villains, people who don't have a side working together to defeat the common foe.
Right.
And it's on an epic scale that we usually see reserved for like the event-style comic. And
right.
It's cool that it gets to exist in this little mini-series.
I think combat is something that we got into a little bit with Invincible, but combat is something that's really, I think, a super important aspect of the superhero comic. What I'm thinking of is it's in the end of Civil War. It was one of the only good parts of Civil War when Spider-Man is getting ready to fight Reed Richards, and he jumps on one guy and he like backflips and takes out another one. He takes out like 3 or 4 people on his way. Spider-Man he's on his way to fight Reed Richards, and as he gets there, Reed Richards goes, amazing. And as Spider-Man's foot connects with Reed Richards' face, he goes, spectacular. And it's just like, yeah, bitch, take that shit. And it really, like, moments like that are why they're just great, right? Because it's like, it connects with that little kid inside you that's like, yeah, kick the crap out of that guy.
It's that Superman punches a giant robot moment.
Absolutely.
It's the kick the dog moment, as Brandt, who unfortunately isn't here, likes to put it so often. There's that moment where, the hero's dog has been kicked, and it's suddenly like, I'm not holding back. Yeah. I'm not like, this isn't a game anymore. Yeah. I'm going to stop you. It's that moment. I forget which series it was, but where Ultron's up to shenanigans and the Avengers bust in and Thor is like, Ultron, we would have words with thee. It's just this very epic moment of like, shit is about to go fucking down.
It's the moment where Bugs Bunny looks to the audience and goes, of course this means war. Yeah. It's that moment where, like, we've taken the gloves off and now shit is on.
It's what superheroes can do. You know, no one can punch each other as hard or as, like, ferociously as a superhero can punch a supervillain, or vice versa.
It's that moment when you're 8 years old and you see a great injustice and you just wish that you could punch that injustice in the face.
That's what it speaks
realized in concrete form.
Yep. And it's funny because there's, I think the more stand up a superhero is during the whole thing, the better it feels when he unleashes at the end and just fucking nails the bad guy with, like, just that perfect punch right to his face or something. Because it's that cathartic moment where you're like, yeah.
It is absolutely catharsis.
Yeah, and it's brilliant. And I think it's such an important part. And I think it's another thing that gets swept under the rug. Because everything's about melodrama and these big events and these big crossovers. It's all about melodrama. It's all about this fake building up of something that you really don't care about. And I think...
Well, most of this book is build up.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, super, super important.
I would like to note, though, that he does have a super-powered dog sidekick.
Well, if he's supposed to be Superman, you gotta
that has probably been kicked more.
As is only just and righteous.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that it's good stuff. I think that the fighty stuff is definitely the good stuff. One of my favorite scenes in Matt Fraction's run on Iron Fist is where Danny and Orson
Randall.
Are fighting together, and Orson's got the guns out, and Danny's doing the Iron Fist thing, and it's just like you're like, yeah, Kung Fu is awesome. So
it's that fuck yeah moment.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think the perfect way to describe it. That fuck yeah moment.
And I think it's what Marvel is really capturing well in their films right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what it is.
They get it,
Well, for the longest time, the movies treated the comic bookness as something that was corny or jokey or to be laughed at.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the first Tim Burton Batman movie, like, it's really laughing at the slapstick nature of comic books.
Yeah, but I think
And the thing that Joss Whedon in particular does, but all the Marvel movies in general go, oh, it's an aircraft carrier that flies and turns invisible. That's so fucking awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's just take that and dial it up as far as we can go.
Yeah.
And just go balls to the wall in that crazy comic booky action. That's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Hulk punching the giant, flying snake thing that's going through New York at the end of Avengers. It's just like
I waited that whole. That was the one thing I was waiting on in that movie, and when it happened, I almost ascended to a higher plane. That's how fucking joyful I was.
It's what we love about superheroes, that fuck yeah moment.
It really is amazing.
You just turn the page and there's that splash page of bad guys getting fucking punched.
And it's great when it's smarmy fuckers too, like Loki, or when Spider-Man kicks Reed Richards, because at that point in Civil War, he's been such a smarmy prig that foot in his face is like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you, man.
I'm actually glad I waited on the new Avengers until it came out on DVD, because I paused that shit so many times just to marvel.
No, there were moments that I wanted to stand up in my seat and go, yeah! because it was just that movie single-handedly restored my faith in the superhero movie. Single-handedly.
It's Joss Whedon. He's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I knew it would be great. It is Joss Whedon.
I mean, as much of it is as I'd love to be like, oh, Whedon did all of it, but it's the faith in Marvel Studios and being like, why do people come see comic books?
Well, making the right choices.
Well, why do people come see comic book movies?
Yeah.
Well,
superhero movies because they love superheroes.
Yeah,
like that's why they're there.
So
you know, like we don't need to
superheroes.
shy away from the fact that this is awesome.
Which is why it's brilliant that they got Edgar Wright to do Ant-Man next year, or is it next year?
It's like when Captain America throws his shield and it bounces like 7 times and he catches it.
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
that's
without
completely
looking.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if
Awesome.
you're just bald faced, like, all right, we're gonna fucking go for
Yeah,
it.
like we don't. It's like
it worked.
we're
Unapologetic.
here. We've already suspended our disbelief.
Yeah.
Fucking let us have it, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
we want
We
Captain
want-
America to fucking fall, like jump on top of a subway train. He throws his fucking shield that way and takes out 3 Hydra agents behind him while he's like kicking and punching other 3.
Yeah.
We want marvelous heroes. We want scene-chewing villains. We
Absolutely.
want flying aircraft carriers
That
and
turn
glowing
invisible.
cosmic cubes that do undefined cosmic shit. Like
Yeah.
It's the thing about
it's crazy.
It's important that it's undefined cosmic shit. Don't even try and define that shit, all right?
No, you can't define it.
it's what's important about books that came later too, like Scud and The Tick
Oh.
and Venture Brothers is like they get that stuff, you know, like when there is a polar bear driving a motorcycle and there's a guy like a frogman, like a scuba guy with a machine gun firing out of the sidecar of that motorcycle.
yeah,
like that's that
absolutely.
moment where you're just like, yes, more of that ridiculous,
please.
you know, like
Oh, in Agents of Atlas, where fucking the robot is like, they're in S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, and he runs down the hallway with the gorilla man with a fucking gun in not only both of his hands, but both of his feet as well.
It's
Yes!
it's Rocket Raccoon. You know,
Yes.
it's shit like that makes us love superheroes, but
Oh.
not just superheroes, but just the absurdity of comic books and
The
make us
su-
like.
well, yeah,
I
the
actually
super-
feel like this is the perfect transition to mine.
Which it is.
Some
No, this
real
is our gift to you.
absurd.
It's the perfect segue.
And I want to back it up just for a second because I had the hardest time picking a comic for this episode because I really didn't grow up reading superhero comics. Like I read Transformers and G.I. Joe and like weird shit like Doctor Strange and like the Silver Surfer.
Adam Warlock, you've mentioned. So
Adam Warlock. I love
good
Jim
stuff.
Starlin on Adam Warlock.
Oh, yeah.
I could
Yeah.
read forever.
Yeah.
Good
And
stuff.
so I bounced around
Starlin.
a lot
You did,
trying
you-
to figure out what I was going to talk about. And the thing that I finally settled on was Next Wave, Agents of Hate by Warren Ellis and Stuart Immonen.
After
which-
5 other choices.
After, yeah, like 5 other choices.
One of which was Invincible. So
One of which
One
was
was
Invincible. And if you
Invincible.
hadn't picked it, I probably would have settled
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you
Zombie
did.
and-
Right.
Now I get to talk about
and I already
this.
talked about Next Wave on this
Yeah,
show.
we've
so
actually mentioned Next Wave a lot.
Wow.
I
But-
recommended it in episode 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't know it, you should go out and read it first of all
Yeah,
because
just
it's
fucking buy
amazing.
it.
And it's everything that's we just talked about that's
Yeah.
great about superheroes, like boiled down into this like diamond hard resin of pure superhero awesomeness.
It's just
And, yeah,
absurdism at its height.
I'm trying to think
Shit
of like.
demons and Fing Fang Foom putting you in his pants
And
I'm trying to think of like an analogy to
mutated
like.
drop bears and just like every crazy
A
superhero
giant
thing that has ever
revolver.
existed.
A giant revolver that you sit on top of, and the barrel of which points back at your own face.
Right.
I
It's
feel like,
basically
yeah.
it's saying
That's my favorite
I
panel
feel
in
like
there.
it's if Warren Ellis wrote Doom Patrol. That's what Next Wave is.
Yeah.
It's Warren
Yeah.
Ellis's Doom Patrol. It's like really indescribable. I'm trying to think of an analogy to like a TV show or something, and you really can't because it's hilarious, but at the same time there are all these moments where you're like, yeah.
it's the perfect
So many
distillation of
fucking-
everything that's amazing about comic books.
Yeah,
And
it really is.
I'm gonna have a very small spoiler here. I'm gonna make it as small as I possibly can. But one of the last like villains that they encounter, Debonair Devil Dinosaur.
Oh my god.
It's a red talking Tyrannosaurus
Oh my god.
in like a 3-piece suit
doing a
with
Bond
a
villain.
with a gun.
Devil Dinosaur the Bond villain.
How do you not love that?
You're dead.
Like going along with what I talked about at the top of the episode in terms of just liking continuity. It's this sense of like the grimdark and the navel gazing that goes on in comics with these like big crossovers and like writers who are constantly trying to redefine the character
or quote unquote fix problems in comics.
I can't remember who it was. It might have even been Mark Waid talks about how every single writer tries to write the same Punisher story where he like accidentally kills an innocent and stops being the Punisher and ends up being a Catholic priest and then like finds reason to become the Punisher again and like goes back to what he was doing. And it's basically that writer like taking the character apart and putting them back together in a way that makes sense to them.
Right.
And that's exactly the thing that I don't like about comics is this sense of almost self-importance. Like, this is really deep and really meaningful, and I'm going to redefine this character for all time, and I'm going to tell the ultimate story about this, and it's going to be great. And the thing that you don't get often enough is just somebody saying, okay, well, I've got this big box of toys, and I'm going to take out these toys, and I'm going to play with them, and it's going to be amazing, and crazy things are going to happen, and there's going to be punching of aliens from Dimension X, and then I'm going to put the toys back in the box, and then the next person's going to come and play with them.
And what I love about this comic in particular, Next Wave, is these are toys no one is playing with.
Oh, absolutely.
It's Machine Man, and
it's like the 7th Captain Marvel that nobody cares
Monica
about.
Rambeau, who was the modern age Captain Marvel in Avengers West Coast.
The female, she's the female Captain Marvel.
Actually, if you add it up, there have been more female Captain Marvels.
That's true.
This is like marks my second, like, I am crazy about this story, and it is my second Marvel story that I'm absolutely nuts about that has Machine Man in it, which is really weird.
Yeah, Machine Man's awesome.
Actually, in my process of getting to Next Wave, I went through both Kingdom Come and Earth X, which are stories that are often compared, not least of which because they're both drawn by Alex Ross.
Yeah.
Which are great in their own right.
Well, Alex Ross did the character designs for Earth X. He didn't actually do the pencils.
Really? He did the covers.
He did the covers and he did the character designs, but I cannot...
But I couldn't pick them because while they're amazing stories within the greater scope of the Marvel and DC universes, they're not what I consider to be like what is archetypically good about superhero comics.
Yes.
And because the thing that I love is that balls to the wall category or quality. And what I'm hoping we're gonna see out of the Rick Remender Captain America. That's I think issue 2 has come out. Issue 3 hasn't come out quite yet at the point that we're recording. But like within the first couple of issues is like he's in Dimension Z and he's fighting like evil robot clones by Armin Zola and crazy things are happening. And it's fun.
And that's I mean I think that's it's over editorializing and this idea that you can tell these really complex stories, and I think we've been kind of dancing around this whole point, right? It takes 70. You want to tell the story where Frank Castle becomes a Catholic priest? That's a 50-issue story.
Absolutely.
That's not something that you can do in a 6-issue arc.
Yeah.
Because you really need to get into this, but people really, and so I feel like writers, they're either A, they're overly ambitious, B, they believe their own press, or C, their hands are tied because they're like, well, you have to tell it in 6 issues. And it's like, this is something that would take 2 or 3 years to
It's
tell.
a really fine line that you draw between, like, how much time am I going to spend with this character developing and growing and the things that we love about comic books in that aspect.
Yeah.
Like, at the beginning of the issue, of the arc, he is a different character than he is at the end of the arc in a better way, or a worse way.
Absolutely.
Even. And the other side of that fine line is how often you're just going to show him punching a giant robot in the face. You know, those fuck yeah moments in comics are earned. You just can't throw them around, but it's a really fine line. And the writers that we've talked about today do it so well.
Oh, no, they nail it. They nail it. And, you know, if you want to read a great Punisher run, Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a no-brainer because this is what Garth Ennis done. He sucks as a superhero writer, writes the Punisher brilliantly, tells some amazing Punisher stories, because when you read the Punisher, you don't want to see him being redeemed, right? You want to see him blowing people away. Bad guys, indiscriminately being blown away.
Yeah.
And this is Next Wave. You put these people together, this is a superhero team that nobody gives a fuck about, and Warren Ellis just does whatever he wants with them, and it is great.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, and I didn't pick this because it's not really a superhero story per se, but Kieran Gillen's run on Journey into Mystery over the last 31 issues, I think it was. Like, it's been like 2.5 years that he's been working on this with Kid Loki. Yeah. And there are a lot of those fuck yeah moments throughout that comic, and he earns every single one of those. Yeah. And every single one builds off of the one that he did right before that. And I think that's something that you don't get often enough in superhero comics.
No.
Is a writer being given 31 issues to build a story like that.
Yeah, because that's what you need. I mean, that's essential. I mean, Next Wave is 12 issues, but
it was supposed to be more. They gave him free reign with that. I mean, that's a book where editorial wasn't over his shoulder all the time.
We all need to give silent thanks to the comic book deities that he actually fucking finished this, because what Warren Ellis is famous for is starting stories that he doesn't finish.
Well, it's not done, though. Technically, he wants to do
more.
Well,
he told an entire arc, unlike... Yeah. I mean, I guess he did it in Desolation Jones, but he definitely left loose ends in Desolation Jones. There's fucking New Universal, which he's like, here's this really interesting premise and the characters, and nothing. You're screwed. You're not going to
Fell's unfinished.
Fell is unfinished.
Doctor Sleepless.
I cannot fault Warren Ellis because he finished Planetary.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I know that wasn't even him. I mean, it was... John Cassidy, who didn't finish the last issue for a long time. Right. Well, he had other issues.
Yeah, exactly.
To deal with.
Yeah.
But the fact that he did in fact finish Planetary
and finished it brilliantly,
amazingly, in my mind, excuses every series that he didn't finish.
Planetary is a series that really me and Toby have talked about. We could really do a whole special episode just on Planetary. It is that good.
It is incredible.
I mean, it goes beyond being a deconstruction, and it goes into just Warren Ellis just lampooning his own characters, fucking with other people's characters, just kind of really distilling everything down
it's
to
the secret history of the 20th century.
Yeah, and it's
brilliant in that regard.
Absolutely amazing. But yeah, I mean, and I think Next Wave completes the Warren Ellis trifecta of Transmet, Planetary, and Next Wave.
Absolutely.
But I agree. I think this is Next Wave I think we've all had good points, but I think Next Wave brings up something where it is self-contained and it represents quite clearly what we love about comic books, which is they're fun to read.
Yeah, and it's got a beginning, it's got a middle, it's got an end, and the characters grow.
Yeah,
sort of. Over the course of that.
Some of them grow in better ways than others.
Well, the captain grows.
Yeah.
He does.
He totally does. He totally does. And I think the cool thing about it is that, and I think we can say that about everything we brought here, they're fun to read.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you don't feel annoyed. You don't feel sick. You don't feel like you just got punched in the face. You feel good after reading him. And you put them down and you immediately start counting the days until you can read it again.
Yeah.
And that's that doesn't have, I think you get a lot of event crossovers, you get a lot of big things that are meant to sell a lot of books to be very flashy, but they're hollow, they're like saltine crackers.
Soulless.
Yeah.
The thing that I say to people when I recommend Transmetropolitan to them is, this is not a comic that you read to be happy. No. This is a comic that will piss you off, that will make you angry at the world around you.
Absolutely.
And it's brilliant and it's amazing to read, but it's not a happy comic. And when I sit down and I read a superhero comic, I want to, in the middle of the comic, put it down, stand up, and just put my hands over my head and go, oh my God, that is amazing!
Absolutely. It's like you're speaking to that kid inside you that still wants to fly and punch bad guys.
You want to be 8 years old again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's great when you can tell a compelling adult story in among that.
Yeah.
But there's that element of you where you want to fight a giant green lizard in purple underoos.
Fuck yes! And this is what's great about, not the Flash run, this is what's great about Ron Mars' run on Green Lantern, is it's so much more than just the superhero badassness. Like Kyle Rayner at one point is getting it on with Donna Troy, who's older than him, and she's hot. She was Wonder Woman, and you're like, yeah, because it's like that. And when you're reading it, you're 14 years old, and you're like, Kyle Rayner kicks ass. That's it. It's like he's the badassest motherfucker on the planet. And when you walk away from that, you just feel great. You put a spring in your step. You don't feel weighed down. You didn't just read about how everything is going. Oh my God! They're all dead and they're all coming back, and it's so just morbid and awful. Like that stuff has its place, you know. You need death of.
My book has that. But...
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's room for Craven's Last Hunt.
Yeah,
but. Not if every story was Craven's Last Hunt, then Craven's Last Hunt loses its punch.
Right. And that's the problem that I have with dark comics. We've talked about this before, that I don't particularly care for dark things. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, I want the hero to win. Absolutely. I want them to win unambiguously. I want them to say, you know what? Evil is bad, and I am going to fight against it. I'm going to stop you, and I'm going to make the world a better place. And I want to be able to put the comic down and go, that was great. I feel better about myself and the world around me. Yeah. Because I got to see Superman punching a giant robot in the face.
Superhero
because that robot had it coming.
Yeah. It's a perfect place for that, you know? The superhero comic is the perfect place.
It is. And I think it's, I think darkness is important every once in a while. But yeah, no, I think that most of the time, that's what you should be getting from superhero. And I don't think you have to be you don't have to be an outstanding writer to do that. Not everybody wants to read, this is the Punisher story, this is the Daredevil story that'll change everything. It's like, no, it won't. It's not going to, all right? You're not Frank Miller. You're not, and it's like, that's great. It's great to be inspired by that. But, you know, what I want to read, I would rather sit down and read 24 pages of Daredevil where he fights the fucking Spot.
Yeah.
Or
Mark Waid's Daredevil.
You know, Stiltman.
Right now, by the way.
Yeah. Which is
great.
Brilliant.
Recommend it to everyone.
Mark Waid's Daredevil. It's a beautiful thing that's happening in superhero comics right now. Like, I would rather read those 24 pages where he fights Stiltman, and it's a little cheesy, and it's a lot of fun, and I put it down, and I'm like, that was great. Then read all of Brubaker's run, because while Brubaker's run has its merit, it's not meaningful to me in the same way, because it's been done. It's too dark. It's like,
it's not an all the time thing, you know. Yeah. You can't live in that world of darkness. Or I'm not a big fan of the hyper violent comics, not because I don't like violence, but because when you put violence on every single page, it loses meaning. Absolutely. You know, where in Invincible, when someone gets a fist through the chest and blood and guts explode out, you feel it because that hasn't happened for 10 issues.
Because that character is probably important to you. It's like when somebody dies in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah, there's a stunning. There's stun. You know, you take. You're stunned.
It has impact.
It has to be meaningful, you know? It has to mean something. And when you just have, like, that monotonous, pointless violence on every single page, it loses impact so quickly. Yeah. That it goes from being, like, hardcore and extreme to just boring and bland, like, so fast.
Right. And this is also the thing that kind of keeps... You know, I would recommend everybody read The Pro by Garth Ennis, but I would also recommend everybody keep in mind that there are better superhero parodies out there.
Yeah.
Because he's trying too hard. You know, I think, and it's not like I've met Garth Ennis, and he is the sweetest man. He is so soft-spoken, and I cannot believe that the insane, depraved, violent, fucked up shit that's in Preacher and that I've heard is in The Boys, which I refuse to read because it's not my kind of book.
It's not that good.
I just can't believe it comes out. Like, you were there with me. Did you stay for the Q&A?
I don't remember.
Because we were in line. We were in line, and I turned to Toby. This is early in our friendship. I turned to Toby, and I'm like, "Well, it's Garth Ennis, but he's no Warren Ellis." I remember thinking how much better it would be if it was Warren Ellis. And it's not because I don't like Garth Ennis. It's because I think Garth Ennis does what he does well. He writes a certain type of story well. I don't think that is a superhero comic.
I remember. I can't remember who I actually asked the question to. I think it was Mark Waid who answered me. I asked what I felt was an insightful question, and I got a smarmy answer.
Was that during the
That was right after 52 had come
out. Right. And he was there with Jeff Johns. It was Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, Greg Rucka, and who else was there?
I think it was just the three of them.
Maybe it was just the three of them.
I think it was a different signing, because I don't think I actually went to the signing with... What's his face?
with Jeff Johns. I remember I went there and I met Jeff Johns. And if I had known then what I knew now, I would have spit on the man. But I was young. He is a super nice guy.
I don't think I went to the signing with Garth Ennis.
Okay, no, you were. I know you were there, because we were in line together. I don't know that you stayed, but
you know what? I was there. I didn't say anything to him because I don't really read Garth Ennis' stuff. It's not my cup of tea.
I went to talk to Derek Robertson, who is the brilliant penciler and an amazingly nice man.
Awesome guy.
Just a super awesome guy.
Awesome.
Totally always, I see him at Emerald City Comic Con every year. I've gone for the last 3 years. He's always willing to chat. Brilliant penciler. His pencils on Transmet are amazing, and it would not be the same story without him.
I went and picked up a commission for you.
You did, and it was...
You did.
This is a quick... I have to tell this story because I think it's a great story, and because Andrew totally saved my ass. When I first moved to Olympia 6 years ago, I started going to the local comic shop where I met met people that I would meet most of the people I hang out with now through. And the owner of this shop bet me that I was a smoker. She bet me I couldn't quit smoking. And I just finished Transmet and I was raving about it. And she goes, well, I know Derek Robertson, and if you quit smoking for a month, I will get him to draw you a sketch of Spider Jerusalem. And so I said, fine. I went out and I smoked my last cigarette and I quit. And it has been a long time. It's been
longer than I've known you.
Yeah, I haven't. Well, it's been probably 7 years that I've quit.
I've known you for 7 years, and I saw you smoke once.
I smoked when I went back to school at the local community college, and that was getting on 5 years ago.
Yeah, and that was I want to say that was 2007.
Yeah, and I had already quit at that point for 2 years when I started again. So. Last year.
Yeah, we were in Emerald City.
I never got this sketch. I quit smoking, but I never got this sketch. Last year I go and I see Derek Robertson at Emerald City and I tell him the story, and he is so cool, right? That he took time out of doing all his other commissions on his own personal time away from the con to draw me this amazing picture of Spider Jerusalem, and it's Spider smoking.
Yeah.
And he's saying, tastes good. And then he wrote congratulations on it. But I left the con without getting it back from him. I missed him. And so Andrew,
I went to go pick it up, and I hung out. I watched him draw it, which was amazing, and got to talk to him a little bit about the boys while he was drawing it. And he was just the nicest, coolest guy I could possibly have met at that con. He was awesome. He was a really cool guy.
I've met a lot of people at Emerald City, and I've met Kurt Busiek, who's super cool. A bunch of other people. I met Frank Quietly, who didn't even look at me. And I'm like, dude, you're not that great, man. I'm sorry.
You've had a hate on for him ever since that day.
You know what? Because fuck him. Like, seriously.
It's hard. It's hard when you meet people and they let you down.
And it's not like, was it too much for him to turn to me and just go, hey? That's it.
Apparently it was.
He was looking at somebody else. I'm like, dude, I am bringing you your work to sign because I bought it.
Yeah.
I employed you. Because if nobody buys your shit, then you have no work.
Yeah. I think we're really lucky that we live so close to Emerald City.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I love that convention.
It's going to be a banner fucking year. Chris Claremont, Denny O'Neil.
Everyone.
Andrew Hussey.
We're not even going there.
Everyone.
Let's not go there.
1,000, when you said that, 1,000 people who aren't even listening to this were like, oh.
And no one can see you making that face. Good job. You fucked it up.
I didn't fuck it up. He's hammering me in the butt.
So what was the question you asked Warren Ellis?
No, it wasn't Warren Ellis. It was
Mark Waid. Mark Waid. Yeah.
What was it? It was something about Superboy Prime. And he gave me like a non-answer.
Mark Waid. It was funny because both Mark, when we were there for the 52 signing thing, Greg Rucka was kind of like, yeah, this, and you could tell that like Jeff Johns was recent. He hadn't been working at DC for very long at that point, and he was very controlled in what he was saying. And both of them, everybody was on contract with DC, so they couldn't tell us too much. But Greg Rucka was very forthright about being like editorial oversights, like they want me to put in more Batwoman, they want me to do this. And Mark Waid several times said, well, I can't say anything, or I don't want to say anything about this.
Actually, no, that was not the question that I asked. The question that I asked was, I forget exactly how I phrased it, but I was like, was there ever something that you were like really, really hot to do about a character and the editorial wouldn't let you do it? Because I mean, I'm kind of interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if you could write anything, what would you do?
Right.
And he was like, I was like, was there ever anything that editorial told you couldn't do? He was like, yes. Next question.
I mean, it's hard for those guys to talk about that kind of stuff. But
I recognize that. But, you're in a comic shop. There's maybe 20, 30 people there.
Yeah.
Like, you could have thrown me a bone.
Yeah. I think that's the kind of stuff that makes...
I would have had Superman fight the moon.
Which I would read the shit out of.
No, that would be awesome.
I think that's the
Evil
kind of...
Moon is bad.
He'd fight the moon from Majora's Mask.
What? Isn't there a Superman villain that's an evil sun?
I don't know. They're sun eaters.
In All-Star Superman, there's something.
Oh yeah, there's
sun.
There's the black sun that turns him all crazy.
Yeah, so you can have an evil moon.
You're totally good. You're totally good.
I think that kind of stuff, the behind the scenes comic book industry talk, is something that all comic fans secretly love. It's our gossip,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
stuff we want to hear about, and it's
Absolutely.
so hard when they're under contractual obligation to not tell us that stuff.
Yeah.
That everything we hear leaked out is
and that's the thing.
It
wasn't even what's something that's coming up next.
Yeah.
Obviously you can't mail me that.
Right.
But if you had one fucking thing that you're I'm never gonna write that story because they're never gonna let me do it.
Yeah.
I'm just
even
I'm
if
bitter.
the answer was I wanted to put a monkey in a comic and they didn't like it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that we're really lucky though to be able to go to Emerald City. I've had nothing but good experiences with the creators I've written there. Everyone and their mother should go to Emerald City Comic Con.
No, don't go. It's already getting too big.
No, it's
go
perfect.
to the big fuck all one down to San Diego. Last year it was way too big.
No.
Don't come up. It sucks. It's awful.
We
all smell. We all smell.
So
what's
good.
funny is I went to the first Emerald City Comic Con and it was teeny tiny.
Yeah.
It was in the lobby of the local sports stadium. There was nobody there. There were no panels. It was just a dealer's room and an artist's alley. And I didn't go for 4 years after that because I was oh, that's a bullshit con. There's nothing there.
Right.
And then finally I went a couple of years ago and it was fucking huge.
I'm gonna have to buy another bookshelf because I always go up there and I always spend a ridiculous amount of money on comic books because they're so cheap. And I find stuff for holes in my collection. But I bought the Walter Simonson Thor omnibus up there for $70. It's a $150 omnibus, and I bought it for $70.
It's a great place to find out of print trades
It
for sure.
It really is.
But I go for the sketches.
The sketches
I got
are
a
great.
sweet sketchbook that I'm working on.
I'm gonna end up waiting in line with my girlfriend to see Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Oh, there's always good.
There's always good media guests.
Yeah.
It's getting big. I mean, it's getting big. It's starting to exist on the same level as the New York Comic Con and
Wizard World Chicago.
It's definitely one of the premier cons at this point.
Right.
Yeah,
it's getting there if it's not
really
already.
is.
Yeah, it's
I'm
getting
hoping
big.
that Richard Starking will be there again this year. He's been there. He was there the first 2 years, 3 years I went, and he wasn't there last year.
That guy's a super interesting guy.
Oh, and Elephant Men. Let me tell you, I couldn't talk about Elephant Men tonight. But check it out.
You should bring it sometime. Cause
I should recommend it.
That.
It's really good. It's one of my favorite things to read.
And he's just a crazy interesting guy because he's been in the industry.
Oh, he's been doing lettering for forever. And
he
for
was
him
with
to go,
what is it?
Comic Craft.
No, he was in the UK. It was AD 20th.
Oh, 2000
2000 AD, yeah.
He started there way back in the day when they were printing Marvel stuff, so he's a crazy, interesting
A
character.
lot of people started there. I mean, Grant Morrison and Warren Ellis both started there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I always think of Brian Boland, who does some of my favorite Batman art.
Yeah.
Or some of my favorite art in general. I love
his covers are fucking awesome.
Oh, they're fucking beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. He does this I can't remember what it just flew out of my head. It's a Joker piece, and I can't.
Well, he did the Killing Joke.
Yeah.
He did all of the art in the Killing Joke.
Did he do all? I thought he only did the colors.
Brian Boland.
I mean the covers. The covers, not the colors. The covers.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure he did the Killing Joke. Brian Boland. I'm not.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I could be wrong. That happens a lot, but I'm pretty sure that he definitely did the covers.
Right.
But I was pretty sure he did the interiors too. Anyway, you can look this up on Wikipedia because we don't know anything.
We're not an encyclopedia.
I don't know.
We're here.
You think we've talked this one into the ground?
I don't know.
I mean,
I think it's.
I mean, when we're bitching about artists and writers who've done us wrong when we met them.
That's true. It's true. I think the point is
our giant size super
it is
edition.
it is our giant size super edition, and I think maybe we have talked into the ground, but I think it's important to remember that while there are a great many ways into reading graphic art or comic books, but I think superheroes represent an important part of it, and I think that recently it's really been they've been mistreated. They've been mistreated by editors and by companies that need to sell books and do it at the detriment of their own intellectual property, and I think it's sad.
They're IP farms at this point.
Yeah, they really are, and it's sad. So, I thought it was important to do this because you should read what's good, and if you don't know what you like, the only way you're going to figure it out is by getting out there and reading what you can get, everything you can get your hands on, even if it's just going to your local comic store, grabbing a trade off the shelf, and sitting down and reading it. Because I think just about every comic shop in Olympia will let you do that.
Yeah, a lot of the good stores.
I think a lot of the good stores are going to let you do that.
Let you just at least thumb through a book or buy a book, and if you don't like it, bring it back. Like, I think that kind of stuff's really important for the industry.
Absolutely.
Even if you're just reading previews of it online.
Yeah, you could even listen to like a podcast to
get
what's good.
With 4 incredibly well-dressed, good-looking indivials shouting at you to what you should read.
You're in sweatpants, Joe. Well dressed.
No, I'm in fleece pants.
You're in sweatpants.
You know what? That's not even the point. The point is that normally I don't even care. Like, normally I'm naked.
The point is that you've given up online.
I have. I really have.
Sweatpants in
That's
public.
what it means.
They're not sweatpants. They're performance fleece.
They're not. Okay. What are you performing? You're sitting here in a chair,
I was
sweating.
Training.
They're sweatpants.
I was training.
Well, he's not exactly sweating either.
Yeah.
I will be later.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the record, the Killing Joke was drawn by Brian Boland.
Okay, it was. Good
I
call.
got it.
Excellent.
I knew a thing.
Important information.
So yeah, I mean,
it's an amazing book. Go read it.
It is a good
Actually,
it is an amazing book.
A really good Batman.
That one and
I'm not even
The Killing Joke.
I'm not a huge fan of Batman at the end of the day, and I really like the Killing Joke.
Well, it's powerful, and the ending is really open to interpretation. It's one of the things I like about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Funny.
So get out there and pick up a superhero book, and stop being a pretentious bastard.
Well, and the fun thing is something cool about superhero books I like is there are a billion of them.
Yeah,
which
literally.
means there's one for you.
Absolutely.
Like, there's definitely something to be found out there, and it's kind of nice to sift through a lot of garbage to find a gem.
Yeah,
that feels
absolutely.
good every once in a while.
Especially because there are those really good runs. I mean, I think every character at one point or another has had a good run. Like, even if you don't like what the New 52 Flash, where they brought back Barry Allen, like, I don't like that. Go read an old Flash.
Absolutely.
Trade.
Absolutely.
Every
One that's
superhero
good.
writer has at least one run.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think that I think his name is Jimmy Robinson, does a book called Bomb Queen that you can definitely get your hands on. Tongue-in-cheek, TNA, hilarious, doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a super villain book. It's not really a superhero book. Check that out. Check out... check out Invincible, definitely.
Yeah,
but,
those creator-owned books are really fun to read. But yeah, definitely just get your hands dirty and dig through some garbage, because finding that gem of a superhero comic that you love, when you earn it in that way, will make that comic worth so much more to you.
And don't be afraid to go back. Don't be afraid to reach back into that dark yesteryear called the modern age, because some amazing stories came out of that.
Yeah, read old comics. They're good. Yeah. They have not been destroyed by the current content.
No, and you can find them all in a very convenient place called the internet too.
Or your local comic book store.
Oh, your local comic book store, which is also awesome.
Yeah. And most of those old issues are worth, next to nothing. So you can dig through some quarter bins.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth
old quarter bins, maybe a nickel bin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those old issues aren't worth a ton. So it's fun to kind of collect a run of old comics. I hate moving single issues from house to house.
Yeah, I don't buy single issues, but just
every once in a while it's fun to just have a long box full of a run.
Yeah.
I was just looking on eBay earlier today, and I see that some of the old incentive dealer covers that I paid $30-$40 for are going for $3 with $2 shipping.
This is why I refuse to buy single issues anymore. I got burned. I was a big collector during the age of the New #1 wraparound chromium cover variant 18,000 variant covers blah blah blah, and I just don't care.
Zero
anymore.
issue.
Yeah, zero issue, and Wizard Magazine doing the XO Manowar one. I still have an XO Manowar 1/2, which
I'm sorry.
That and I could sell that for nothing.
Yeah.
And then I would have nothing.
Yeah. I'd give you twice that for it.
Twice that? Wow. Okay, I've got a buyer.
Wow.
You've got two nothing.
Looks like
there.
you made a lot of money on that.
I just doubled my. You put a 1 and 2 zeros in front of that, and we're in business. But this was our first bonus episode.
Let us know if you like it, because I don't know. We're gonna keep going back and doing our old format from now on. But if we get a lot of people
what are we
saying,
doing? We're doing next. We're doing.
God, I don't remember.
We're doing Shield, which is
Shield.
episode 14.
Yeah, episode 14.
Assuming that you're listening to these in the order that we recorded them,
which
is
not.
Probably unlikely.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't have to listen to them.
So if this has gone up out of order for whatever reason, probably because I did it, tell Chard
Let's
that I was
just
going
put
to.
that out of order, seriously.
Forget that you heard that. Wait until you listen to episode 13 to find out the surprising countdown vote.
The M. Night blah 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 twist.
Shyamalan.
Shyamalan.
Sham Hammer.
It's the Sham Hammer. That's a twist. It's a twist.
Yeah. So we'll be going back to our standard format of the book of the month, but
of not bonus episodes.
Yeah, but if you like the bonus episode, let us know. We might do another one.
And if
you don't like it, leave a comment, and we'll probably ignore you.
And let us know. Let us know what we really
just do it to spite you.
We will. We will
specifically.
Yeah. Let us know what issues you don't want us to talk about, so we can talk about those issues specifically.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really big into.
All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening. We've done a year's worth of episodes, and this is our bonus.
Hopefully, we've ruined your Christmas.
We have. Happy holidays. We don't believe in Christmas here. We're all
Actually,
atheists.
Christmas sucks.
So
all right,
we are active participants in the war on Christmas.
Or for Christmas, ask for the comic book.
That's what you're gonna do.
That's the right answer.
Let's come on. We all know what it's about.
Comic books. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.